Hola amigos, bienvenidos al tiempo extra. Me llamo Gregorio Lalas.
What the heck are you talking about?
Can we get the Senadoras if we're going to get that?
What are you talking? Well, I was in Mexico City for a week. It's hard. Must have been all the tequila. However, no salt necessary. Next on Extra Time. Welcome to Extra Time, everybody. I'm your host, Greg Lawless, alongside Shep Messing and Jason, the producer, as always. It is good to be back from Mexico City. Act 1 of the week's show, Champions League. We're going to be talking about the CONCACAF Champions League a little bit later on. We're going to start, however, with some quick thoughts about this past weekend. Shep, what stood out to you this past weekend?
Well, for me, it was the Seattle at LA game. A fight happened and a soccer game broke out. I liked it. I really do. I like the physicality. These two teams are competing for a playoff spot, and David Beckham, the red card. I love it.
Well, 3 red cards on the day. Did you think it was a red card?
Absolutely. And David Beckham has that in his past. He has a tendency to be a little bit violent. It was studs up. It was over the ball. It was a leg-breaking tackle. I love Bruce Arena. He said he's been in a few rodeos before.
Right. I was going to say, I think that was Paul Scholes' job when they were at Manchester
Beckham
United.
was the pretty boy. He wasn't supposed to get into that. I actually got in touch with Peter Vallanas afterward, and he said to me that he and Beckham talked about it, and they kind of laughed it off, although Peter said Peter laughed it off because they won the game, and that Beckham was still pretty angry about having lost the game.
Yeah, I like the emotion. I like teams fighting for that playoff spot, and both teams showed it.
Yep, it's important. Jason, what stood out to you this weekend?
To me, it had to be Salt Lake, Houston. We talked about how that game set up for Real Salt Lake to take 3 points from Houston. Then, even more so, Houston goes down a man, and you're thinking, okay, Salt Lake has it, 3 points in the bag, they really need this. Clint Mathis with, I don't know, I don't want to use...
Petulant.
Sure.
Deserved or not?
You're showing up a referee, and this is after when he got his first card, although it was early, and I hate the early yellow cards. If you look at the tackle, it was an ugly tackle. He got that first yellow card. He got in the ref's face about that. So then getting in the ref's face again about the call, you have to know that you're going to get a second yellow card. You can't do that.
Well, you guys are all about the violence. What stood out for me was the Columbus Crew getting another result. It doesn't matter who they have on the field. They seem to get results. No Guillermo Barros Schelotto again. Doesn't matter. They get the win. That to me is impressive and something. I mean, they haven't lost since April 5th. They haven't lost. Sorry, they've lost once since April 5th.
I totally agree with you, though. What an impressive team. And who in this league or who anywhere can mark Chad Marshall getting forward on a set piece?
It's almost impossible, isn't it? Marco Velez for Puerto Rico. We'll get to that in a little bit with the Champions League. Now, there were some player moves this past week. Actually, just announced Jesus Padilla, going from...
I thought, what happened to that Mexican
accent? I know, the Mexican accent's gone.
All of a sudden, you can't say Padilla.
Padilla leaving Chivas de Guadalajara and joining Chivas USA. El Gringo is what they call him down there. He is from California originally. Good move for Chivas?
I guess my thoughts on it are it won't hurt them, but a lot of times when you see players come from South America or Mexico, it takes a little while for them to adjust to the league.
Yep.
Well, he doesn't have time to adjust to the league right now. They have to win games. They have to stay in the playoff hunt. So if he can come in and contribute right away, then that's good for them. And if it takes him a while to adjust, then
I hope he does well for them. But as an attacking player, one of the backup goalkeepers for New York Red Bull, Danny Sapero, he's got a better goal-scoring record. He has 1 goal in 23 games. That's more than Padilla.
Right, Padilla no goals in 24 games for Chivas de Guadalajara. Now, a couple of moves last week that improved both teams, it seems. Ryan Cochran rejoining Houston, coming over from San Jose. And then Julius James leaving Houston and going to D.C. Now, these are two teams that are about to get into some fixture congestion. Mm-hmm. They really needed to bolster, didn't they?
Yeah, I think good moves for both teams. Julius James, a little bit of an enigma because I think he has a lot of potential. Originally traded for De Rosario, but keeps getting less and less as he moves on. But maybe he's a project, so he's good trade bait.
But that potential is what is the trade bait, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So,
He's a great character, great guy. Should have a good future. Right. Cochran, that's steady.
Right.
Yeah, for what Houston gave up in athleticism, they gained in experience with Cochran. For DC, they give up, a third-round draft pick for a guy like Julius James who has all that potential, has that athletic ability, and he's an upgrade over Greg Janicki if that's your second center back.
Right. And he can help them right away because they're about to jump into the Champions League. CONCACAF Champions League begins this week. The group stages begin this week. 3 MLS teams are playing. Tonight, DC is playing Marathon of Honduras. Columbus is playing the Puerto Rico Islanders of the USL 1 division. Tomorrow on Wednesday, Houston will play Isidro Metapan, an El Salvadoran team, again with the accent. They give me that look, aren't you? That I can't get the accents right. Let's just talk a little bit about the Champions League, because there's a lot of discussion on the blogs and the boards about the fact that MLS teams aren't winning it and don't seem to be putting enough effort into winning it. What are your thoughts on that, Shep?
There are a couple of different factors. First of all, I think this new format, and this is the second year of a new format, CONCACAF Champions League format, it's stretched out a little bit over time, which makes it more challenging for the MLS teams because they have limited rosters and they really don't have 18 quality players on their roster. So is it important? Absolutely. I think the way the world perceives CONCACAF and MLS teams, it's very important. You can understand some of the coaches where they have to balance what they do with their players.
Well, if you win the Champions League, you go to the Club World Cup, and that, I think, is the best place that MLS can prove themselves against international competition in a game that really matters. I mean, when they play a friendly against Real Madrid, it's great and you get a big crowd, but at the same time, this game really doesn't matter to Real Madrid.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you could argue that at the Club World Cup, Manchester United isn't necessarily putting as much importance on that as they would the UEFA or the Champions League final. But that said, this is our Champions League. This is Champions League of our region, and this is a place where we can prove ourselves against Mexican teams, against the Saprisas of the world, and our teams need to take that next step to gain that respect, need to do well in this tournament. And as hard as it will be when they get to the elimination round, which starts in February or March, before the MLS season, they need to get through this group stage. They need to show that we can get through this group stage.
Well, the three MLS teams that are in it, which depth is a big factor at this point, right? Which one do you think has the depth to really succeed right now?
I think the interesting thing about it is DC might have the best depth right now, but they're not playing as well as Houston and Columbus. So if Houston and Columbus are playing well, DC might have the most depth, which over time, throughout the next couple months, might help them to get through. I honestly think all three teams should get through.
Well, I hate to agree with Jason. The depth of DC United, they have depth, but I don't think enough quality in the depth to get through. I think Columbus,
I think
they're
they
the
only
toughest.
have depth if it's quality, though. You can't say you have depth and they're not
throwing
being quality.
throwing bodies out. But Columbus is in arguably the group of death. Puerto Rico Islanders, who had a great run last year, Cruz Azul,
and
Saprissa. But their coach, Robert Vorcia, has said, this is paramount to us. We want to win this tournament. He's going to play his starting 11. So I think they all three could get through, but I think Columbus is the one to watch all the way.
Well, the CONCACAF Champions League gets going in the group stages this week. A couple of big games, 3 big games for the MLS teams just to get off on the right foot. In Wednesday in Act 2, we'll look at LA's big matchup with the Chicago Fire.